Commanders' defense is on the brink of collapse. And I'm not exaggerating, Commanders fans. As we gear up to face Patrick Mahomes and the undefeated Chiefs on Monday Night Football, our defensive situation just took a massive hit. We're talking about losing our most dominant player on the defensive line right when we need that presence the most. But that's not even the worst part. Our defensive coordinator is publicly admitting things aren't working. And on top of that, Marcus Mariota has to go up against the best defense in the league without Jaden Daniels. Think it can't get worse? I'm telling you, it absolutely can. Because every single piece of news I'm about to break down could define not just this game against Kansas City, but the rest of our season. So stick around, because what's coming is absolutely critical to understanding where we stand as a team. Let me be brutally honest with you. The news that Daron Payne is questionable for Monday night's game against the Chiefs isn't just concerning, it's devastating. And let me explain exactly why this is way more serious than it looks on the surface. Daron Payne hasn't practiced at all this week. Not once. We're talking about a guy who's been absolutely dominant this season, who finally stepped out of Jonathan Allen's shadow and became the defensive leader this team desperately needed. And now we've got to face Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and that explosive Kansas City offense without our best defensive player. Do you understand how massive that is? But here's what really has me worried. Officially, they're calling it a toe issue. A toe. Now, I'm no doctor, but when a 320-pound trench warrior can't practice all week because of a toe, that tells me this injury is way more serious than they're letting on. And here's the question Nitrogen Monoxide 1 is asking. Why not just rule him out? Or at least list him as doubtful? Why keep him as questionable? I'll tell you why. Either they're being extremely optimistic about his recovery, or they're playing mind games with Andy Reid and the Chiefs. Because let's be real, if Kansas City preps their offensive line thinking Payne's gonna play, and then he doesn't, that throws off their whole game plan. But that's a risky move, because if Payne really can't go, we're the ones who are going to pay the price. Now let's talk numbers, because stats don't lie. Payne has been our most disruptive defensive player this season. He's playing at the same level he did during his Pro Bowl season in 2022, when everyone thought he was about to land a monster contract. He stepped up his production, become a vocal leader in the locker room, and honestly, he's been the only reason our defense hasn't completely fallen apart. And you know what's most frustrating about all this? We're already wrecked with injuries on the D-line. Dorrance Armstrong Jr. is out for the season with a serious knee injury. Jonathan Allen hasn't looked the same since his own injury. And now, just when we need all hands on deck against one of the most lethal offenses in the NFL, we might lose Payne. You think this is bad luck? I think it's a full-blown nightmare. But wait, it gets worse. There have been some flat-out reckless rumors floating around about a possible trade involving Payne before the deadline. And let me say this loud and clear. That would be insane. This man is playing like a franchise cornerstone. He's proving he deserves to be treated and paid like one. If Adam Peters is even thinking about trading Daron Payne, then we need to have a serious conversation about the direction of this team. Now, to be fair, let's talk contingencies. We've got Javon Kinlaw, Johnny Newton, and Eddie Goldman to step in. They might even elevate Sheldon Day from the practice squad as insurance. That's a decent group, I won't lie. But here's the harsh truth. None of those guys are Daron Payne. None of them have his mix of power, technique, and leadership. None of them can collapse the pocket the way he does. And here's the perfectly awful timing of this nightmare. Kansas City's got their own issues on the O-line. Josh Simmons, their first-round tackle, is out with a personal matter. Trey Smith, their nasty right guard, is questionable. This was our golden opportunity to attack their weakened line, to make Mahomes uncomfortable in the pocket, to force him into rush decisions. But without Payne, that edge is basically gone. You know what happens when you give Patrick Mahomes a clean pocket? The same thing that happened in the Super Bowl. The same thing that's happened in every playoff run they've won. The guy's a magician when he's got time. And without Payne pushing from the inside, we're about to give him all the time in the world, Dot. And now I ask you this. How is Joe Wick Jr. supposed to design an effective defensive game plan when he doesn't even know if his best player is going to suit up? That's the real issue here. It's not just losing Payne, it's the uncertainty. It's having to prep two completely different game plans, one with him and one without. And in pro football, especially against a team like the Chiefs, that kind of uncertainty can be deadly. But here's what really worries me long term. If this toe injury is bad enough to keep him out of practice all week, what does that say about his availability for the rest of the season? Because foot issues for a defensive lineman don't just go away. Those toes take a beating on every snap, every collision with the O-line. If Payne plays hurt, aren't we risking a more serious injury that could end his season? I'm telling you, this is a no-win situation. If you play him hurt, you risk losing him longer. If you sit him, you're basically handing the game to Mahomes on a silver platter. It's a lose-lose, and honestly, I don't envy Dan, Quinn, or the medical staff right now. And here's the question every Commanders fan should be asking. Is it worth risking the long-term health of our best defensive player for one game, even if it's against the undefeated Chiefs on Monday Night Football? Let's be real, our season's already on the ropes. We're fighting just to stay afloat in the NFC East. Does it make sense to sacrifice the future for the present? But on the flip side, this is exactly the kind of game where you need your best players. This is Monday Night Football. This is the Chiefs. This is the kind of game that can define your season, that can give your team the confidence to make a second-half run. How do you tell Daron Payne he can't play on the biggest stage? The reality is this. Without Daron Payne, our already shaky defense becomes nearly unplayable. We're giving up the fourth most yards in the entire league. We're 12th in points allowed. And that's with Payne playing at an elite level. Can you imagine what those numbers look like without him? Do you really think we can stop the Chiefs without our best defensive player? Because I've got serious doubts. But if you thought that was bad, wait until you hear what's going on with our quarterback situation. Now let's talk about Marcus Mariota, because this situation is both fascinating and terrifying. Jaden Daniels is out for the third time this season, and once again, Mariota has to step in and try to save the day. But here's the wild part both he and Cliff Kingsbury are projecting a level of confidence that honestly surprises me given the circumstances. Cliff Kingsbury came out and said straight up that Mariota has been tremendous in his preparation, that his command of the offense, his leadership, the way he's been getting ready, it's all been really solid. And then he added something that really caught my attention. Not much is going to change. We're going to try to do things he specifically likes and tailor the game plan to that. But other than that, we're going to let him loose and let him go. Did you hear that? We're going to let him loose and let him go. Against the Kansas City Chiefs. Against Steve Spagnuolo, one of the sharpest defensive minds in the NFL, on Monday Night Football. With the whole world watching. I'm telling you, that takes guts. But here's what really has me intrigued. Mariota himself said something that stood out. I really try to prepare like I'm the starter every week and get all the mental reps. Now, more than ever, I'm getting more physical reps than mental ones. But I try not to change my process during the week because I feel like as long as I stick to my process, I can lean on that whether I'm playing or not. That's veteran mindset. That's exactly what you want to hear from your backup quarterback. But here's the million-dollar question. Is that enough against the Chiefs? Because let's be brutally honest about what we're asking here. We're asking a backup quarterback who hasn't been a full-time starter since 2019 to go into Monday Night Football against the undefeated team in the NFL, led by Patrick Mahomes with a defense that's been playing lights out all season. Do you understand how ridiculously hard that is? And here's the context that makes this even tougher. The last time Mariota played meaningful snaps was against the Cowboys, and that game was a complete disaster. We were down big. The offense couldn't move the ball. And even though Kingsbury said Mariota only had one throw he'd like to have back, the truth is the whole team looked lost. But hold up, here's what gives me a little hope. This is Mariota's third start this season. It's not like we're throwing him into the fire cold. He's had reps with the first team. He's been in pressure situations. And most importantly, he's had days to prep specifically for this game. It's not a last-minute emergency situation. Now let's talk about what Kingsbury said regarding adapting the game plan. That's absolutely critical. Because here's the reality. Marcus Mariota is not Jaden Daniels. He doesn't have the same explosive mobility. He doesn't have the same rocket arm. He doesn't have that same improvisational magic that's bailed us out of so many drives this season. But what Mariota does have is experience. He's got 100 career starts in the NFL. He's played in the playoffs. He's won big games. He knows how to manage the moment, how not to let the stage overwhelm him. And against a team like the Chiefs, where game management and smart decisions are everything, that experience is gold. And you know what else Mariota has? He's got Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel Sr. back. Those are two elite receivers who can make any quarterback look better. If Kingsbury can scheme up ways to get those two in one-on-one matchups, Mariota's got the tools to make it work. But here's my biggest concern. The Chiefs have one of the best secondaries in the league. Steve Spagnuolo is a master at disguising coverages and dialing up creative blitzes. And historically, Mariota has struggled with decision-making under pressure. When he's rushed, when he has to make quick reads, that's when the mistakes happen. And now I ask you, how is our offensive line already struggling to protect Jaden Daniels supposed to give Mariota the clean pocket he needs against Kansas City's pass rush? Because that's the X factor here. If Mariota has time, he can make all the throws. But if he's under constant pressure, if he's forced into quick decisions, that's when things can go south real fast. Here's what really fascinates me about this situation. Mariota said his preparation hasn't changed much compared to other weeks. He's known for a few days that he's starting, but his process has stayed the same. That tells me two things. First, he's truly been preparing like a starter all year, which is professional. Second, he's confident in his system, in his prep, in his ability. But confidence only takes you so far. At some point, you've got to execute on the field. And executing against the Chiefs on Monday Night Football is a whole different beast than doing it in practice or even in a regular game. I'm telling you this, if Mariota can keep this game close, if he can avoid costly turnovers, if he can make the key plays on third down, then we've got a shot. I'm not saying we're going to win, but we've got a shot. Because in football, especially on Monday Night Football crazy, things can happen. But here's the reality no one wants to admit. We're asking Mariota to outplay Patrick Mahomes. We're asking our backup quarterback to be better than the guy who might go down as the greatest quarterback of all time. Do you realize how insane that sounds when you say it out loud? And yet, here's the beauty of football. The best quarterback doesn't always win. Sometimes the team that executes better wins. The team that makes fewer mistakes. The team that makes the big plays in the big moments. And if Mariota can be efficient, protect the ball, and deliver when it counts, then who knows what could happen? What gives me a little hope is that Kingsbury clearly believes in him. He's not trying to shrink the playbook or play ultra-conservative. He's saying we're going to let him go. That means he believes Mariota can run the full offense, make all the throws, handle the pressure. But here's my final question about this whole situation. Is this Mariota's shot to prove he can still be a starting quarterback in this league? Because let's be real, his career has been a roller coaster. He was the number 2 pick in the draft, had flashes of brilliance in Tennessee, but never found consistency. Now he's in that respected veteran but backup phase. If he comes out and has a big game against the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, that changes everything. Suddenly, teams around the league start wondering if maybe he deserves another shot as a starter. Suddenly, his market value jumps. Suddenly, the narrative around his career shifts. Do you think Marcus Mariota can shock the world against the Chiefs? Shock the world against the Chiefs? And now we get to what might be the most honest and most alarming admission we've heard from a defensive coordinator all season. Joe Witt Jr. basically came out and said what we've all been thinking. Our defense isn't working, and they need to fix it now. Here's exactly what he said. It's detailed, but also, okay, we said we want to be a team that runs and hits. We've got to be that. And that's one reason why when I started and DQ talked about this yesterday, I think, we're going to scale some things back and really let the run and hit mentality come to life and allow guys to separate the ball from people. Did you catch that? We're going to scale some things back. In Week 8, against the Kansas City Chiefs, on Monday Night Football, they're admitting that their defensive scheme has been too complicated, too complex, and they need to simplify it so the players can just go out and play. I'm telling you, that's both concerning and refreshing. It's concerning because it means we've been running a system that our players clearly haven't been able to execute for 7 straight weeks. But it's refreshing because at least they're acknowledging the problem and trying to fix it. But here's what really got me thinking. Witt said something else that's absolutely crucial. Defensively and as a team, we just have to play fast and play complementary football. When we do that, we look really good. When we don't, we look like we did against the Cowboys. There it is. That's the admission. When they don't execute, they look like they did against the Cowboys. And we all saw that game. It was a total disaster. The defense got shredded. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't pressure the quarterback. They couldn't cover receivers. It was a masterclass in how not to play defense in the NFL. And here's the context that makes this even more alarming. We're giving up the 4th most yards of any team in the league. 4th. Out of 32 teams. That's not just bad. That's catastrophic. And we're 12th in points allowed, which sounds better until you realize that means over half the league has better defenses than us. But Witt also talked about a specific issue that I found fascinating. He mentioned the loss of Will Harris and how that's impacted defensive communication. Here's what he said. It's been kind of like the game. It's been certain players have been really good communicators. Some haven't. Nobody really. Talks about the loss of Will Harris, who was a really good communicator. And so that's one reason we're going to scale some things back to eliminate some of the communication we might need in the reduction game. Do you get what he's saying here? They lost a player who was key to defensive communication, and that's caused a domino effect that's thrown off the whole unit. And their solution is to simplify the scheme to reduce the need for complex communication. That's basically admitting they don't trust their players to communicate effectively on the field. And now I ask you, how did we get here? Because this isn't a new problem. It's not like they just discovered in Week 8 that the defense isn't working. This has been an issue all season. Why did they wait this long to make these adjustments? Here's my theory. I think Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. came into this season with a very specific plan for how they wanted to play defense. They wanted to be multiple. They wanted to be complex. They wanted to show different looks and confuse quarterbacks. But what they realized is they don't have the personnel to run that kind of scheme. And that brings us to a bigger question about Adam Peters and how this roster was built. If Quinn's defensive vision requires smart players who can communicate and execute complex schemes, why didn't they bring in those types of players during the offseason? Why are we just now figuring out in Week 8 that our guys can't handle the system? But here's what really worries me about simplifying the scheme. When you take out the complexity, when you make everything more basic, that also makes it easier for opposing offenses to prepare for you. Because now, instead of having to prep for multiple looks and exotic schemes, the Chiefs can just say, okay, these guys are going to play this way. Here's how we attack it. I'm telling you, this could be a disaster. You're simplifying your defense right before facing Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, 2 of the smartest offensive minds in football. Those guys feast on simple defenses. They thrive when they know exactly what you're going to do. But on the flip side, maybe simplicity is exactly what we need. Maybe we've been overthinking everything. Maybe what we need is to just put our best players in position to make plays and let them go. Because like Witt said, when we play fast and play complementary football, we look good. The problem has been execution, not necessarily the concept. Here's what gives me a little hope. Witt talked about getting back to being a run-and-hit team. That's fundamental football. That's about being physical, about winning at the line of scrimmage, about forcing turnovers. And if we can do that, if we can get back to those basics, then maybe we've got a shot. But here's the brutal reality. The Chiefs have one of the most sophisticated offenses in the NFL. They've got guys in space who will make you pay if you don't execute perfectly. They've got a quarterback in Patrick Mahomes who can exploit any mistake. And we're trying to stop them with a simplified defense that's basically admitting it can't handle complexity. Do you see the problem here? It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. It's like trying to play checkers when your opponent is playing four-dimensional chess. We're at a massive disadvantage before the game even kicks off. And here's what really frustrates me. Witt said, "It's been how we played. It hasn't been good enough." So we've been really diligent in looking at every aspect of it, and we've got to turn it around. We've got to turn it around, and we've got to turn it around now. Now, in Week 8, against the Chiefs. That's the definition of terrible timing. You're not fixing your defense against some average team in a regular game. You're trying to fix it against the best team in the league on the biggest stage. Do you understand how hard that is? But here's what gives me a sliver of hope. At least they're being honest about the problem. At least they're trying to make adjustments. Because the worst thing they could do is keep doing the same thing that clearly isn't working and expect different results. That would be the definition of insanity. What we need to see Monday night is exactly what Witt is describing. We need to see a defense that plays fast, that's physical, that hits. We need to see players who aren't overthinking, who are just reacting and making plays. We need to see that run-and-hit mentality that's been missing for most of the season. But here's my final question about all of this. If simplifying the scheme is the answer, if reducing complexity is what we need, why didn't we do it sooner? Why did we wait until we're in crisis mode, until we're about to face the Chiefs on Monday Night Football to make these changes? I think the answer is pride. I think Quinn and Witt wanted to prove their system could work, that they could be multiple and complex. But sometimes in football, you've got to admit your original plan isn't working and make adjustments. And that's exactly what they're doing now, even if it might be too late. The truth is this: it doesn't matter how simple your scheme is if your players can't execute. It doesn't matter how complex your playbook is if you don't have the talent to stop the other team. And against the Chiefs, against Patrick Mahomes, against Travis Kelce, you need both talent and perfect execution. Do you think simplifying the defense is enough to stop Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? So there you have it, Commanders fans. 3 stories that paint a pretty grim picture of where we are heading into this Monday Night Football showdown against the Chiefs. We've got our best defensive player listed as questionable with a mysterious toe injury. We've got our backup quarterback trying to convince us he can go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. And we've got our defensive coordinator publicly admitting that his system hasn't worked and needs to be simplified. Does that sound like a recipe for success to you? Because I've got some serious doubts. But here's the beautiful thing about football, especially Monday Night Football. Anything can happen. We've seen teams with no shot come out and win games nobody thought they could. We've seen backup quarterbacks have the game of their lives. We've seen struggling defenses suddenly find their rhythm at just the right time. Can that happen for us on Monday night? Honestly, I don't know. What I do know is that everything has to go perfectly. We're going to need Daron Payne to suit up and play through the pain. We're going to need Mariota to have the best game of his career. We're going to need this simplified defense to somehow find a way to slow down the best offense in the league. Is that asking a lot? Absolutely. Is it impossible? No, nothing's impossible in the NFL. But here's what I need from you, Commanders fans. I need you to stick with this team. I need you to believe even when it feels like there's no reason to. Because that's what it means to be part of this burgundy and gold family. We don't walk away when things get tough. We don't quit when we're the underdogs. We fight to the end no matter what, Dot. So here's my question for you. Do you think we can win this game? Do you believe Marcus Mariota can outplay Patrick Mahomes? Do you believe our defense can find a way to stop the Chiefs? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts, your predictions, your hopes, and your fears. And if you believe in this team as much as I do, if you're ready to ride this out on Monday night, no matter what happens, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications. Because after this game against the Chiefs, we're going to have a lot to talk about. And you're not going to want to miss a second of that conversation. This is our family. This is our community. And together, we're going to ride out this season, no matter what comes our way. And remember, hail to the Redskins.